on Indian crypto regulation. So, Mr. Dilip, I want to make your job a little easier, if you will, if you allow me, please, and go to the audience and just, if when you hear the word, the past and the future of Indian crypto regulation, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? That's just one line, very briefly. Anybody? Or I'm going to just pick up people randomly because we have to do this, okay? So sorry?
Tax.
Tax. Okay, so Dilip sir is getting a lot of cues. Yes, ma'am.
Liability. Who's liable in a decentralized world?
Who's liable? Okay, Anuradha.
Licensing.
Licensing, all right. Anybody else? Anything? Sir, what do you think?
2020 May, we were very much elated once the ban got reversed.
When the ban got reversed, people were elated. Now, that was 2020 you said, right? Now, what if 2025? What do you guys think? How do you see in 2025, the crypto regulation? Sir, if I may.
The word is regulator.
Regulator. There has to be a regulator. So we need regulation, right? So 2025, what comes to your mind?
Much, much better than what it is now.
Much better. So there's a lot of optimism, if I may, right? So Dilip sir, I think you've got a lot of cues. Now if I can request, the stage is yours. We have an amazing set of audience who are really energetic. Thank you so much. All yours.
Thank you, and very good afternoon, and it's great to be here. Thank you for joining this panel. I know I might sound like an airline person, but you had choices, you are here. So obviously you're interested in the past and the present and the future of regulation, whether it be tax or ban or whatever it is. Okay, let me start with, it's very interesting. If you take my surname, then it's ABC, right? But Amit and Bharat, and this is a question, you can decide who wants to go first. The last 1 year, right, has seen huge and significant developments in the regulatory space, whether it's Web3 and VDA. Of course, we capped it with the G20 discussions, but before that we had the CERT-N, then we had the whole inclusion of the VDAs and reporting entities. So what impact, positive or negative, right, has it brought about in the Web3 sector, and how do you see it influencing the regulatory discourse? Impact of what's happened so far, and how do you see it influencing the regulatory discourse going forward? Yeah.
So I think, am I audible?
Yeah.
So I think what has happened after the PML notification and all the VDAs were required to be registered as reporting entity, it has given some sort of recognition and some sort of legitimacy to what we are doing. Earlier, everyone was clueless. Like wherever we used to go, there was no legitimacy. Even the bankers were refusing us, because they were not aware as to who we are, what we do. We don't have any license, something like that. So it has for sure given some sort of recognition and legitimacy to what we were doing. And how will it affect? I think this is the first step, and there is a long way to go. But now when we introduce ourselves to everyone, we say we are a reporting entity, right? So, and who are the reporting entities? Like earlier, the banks were the reporting entities, then the PAs were the reporting entities. Now we are in the same league. So I think it's a step, first step. There's a long way to go, but it has for sure, given some clarity.
Or they say, okay, while you're registering, but legality is a bit question mark. What do you say?
Yeah, from nowhere to somewhere, it is good as of now, right? Earlier, even we take a word crypto, like bankers, like what is this? Like what's the new stuff, right? Like what you guys are selling it and all that stuff. So now it's like more like, okay, hey, this is what we have it now. Like now you should provide the requisite services. So that's anyways it's good, right? You can't have a lot of people working on, engaging with a certain infrastructure and where there is no regulations in that, right? Like someone has to say, hey, this is good and this is bad. The reason is the reason for government also, if you see it, why they are more kind of wanted to do or restrict few things because of the certain bad players in the ecosystem who kind of laundered and all the stuff. That is the only reason where they wanted to come and say, hey, like okay, like take a pause and do, and like now we are making these guys as a reporting entity and so and so. So overall, I see it's good so far. I mean, it would be great, like it would have become last couple of years earlier, but it's so good.
Yeah, okay. So you're saying that the whole FIU reporting thing and certain was because of bad players in the system, okay? But both of you are kind of registered with FIU India, right? And how is your KYC and AML kind of practices evolved over the past few years? So where were you pre-announcement? Where are you now? And of course, where will you be going forward? Is this a heavy compliance burden? And is KYC reducing or resulting in a lot of us in the room dropping off?
So I think if I compare my early days when we started working, I was working with Zeppe, and that point in time we had no idea as to what should we do. Like someone calling us from Jodhpur and saying that ki inka saman aapke paas hai. Like he was talking about Bitcoin and we were supposed to return it to that person. So I say it's not something tangible. I can't just, it's not with me. So, from that point, and my compliance guy used to do manual screening. Like there were no tools, there was no, nothing, no direction. So we took inspiration from banks, we took inspiration from other financial institutes, and we started drafting some policies, some KYC, some AML screening. And from that point to till from now, I think we were doing a lot of, we were parallelly doing KYC, we were parallelly doing AML checks and all those compliances. But now when there is a regulator sitting on us, the regulator keep asking for certain information, they keep screening us, they keep scrutinizing us, policies and frameworks, and even that streamlines the entire process. Like earlier when we were clueless, we had no basis to what we were doing. We were not sure whether our KYC or our ML practices were to be approved by the regulator. But now everything, like there is a regulator, like FIU say is not a regulator per se, but there is a body, they scrutinize, they approve. So that is, a major shift from where we were earlier.
Okay, so very interesting. I know the audience may not age profile is, but do you guys know companies like Escorts, DCM, right? I know some people who have gray hair or no hair like me would know, but these companies were the fountainhead of management level people in the companies that came after them. Looks like Zeppe and some others performed the same role there. But anyway, but how do you see it? Because you are just pre-seed or whatever you want to talk about it. But how do you see it?
So yeah, as I said, like we launched our product like late 2021. By the time like things have been little bit evolved, right? But like there is no regulations as such when we started, and like it's more about convincing my early team members, right? Like they ask more questions than anyone else, like why this is, how it is regulated and all the stuff, right? So we draw a parallel line. See, whatever we are doing is in the lines of the financial services, right? So whatever the compliance which is currently existing in the financial services, let's take it and implement it before even anyone asks for it, right? And that's how we started from the day one, like the basic KYCs in the place and all the stuff. Now, that time we had a certain ticket size, like after that we do the KYCs, and after this FAU, like now it is like every single rupee has to be KYC'd, right? And now it's a KYC is done, right? Next I want to touch the topic of AML, right? Like that is why the first thing is in the KYC, like how do we stop the AML, right? Like having a liveliness checks or having a PAN card, Aadhaar card verification doesn't going to stop the AML, right? Because a lot of things which you are seeing in the ground, a lot of people are like, not a lot of people, like a lot of bad actors in the ecosystem are kind of doing this thing, right? So we wanted to kind of understand how we can be able to help the local cyber teams, right? So now we are building a product like which can able to identify what are the wallet addresses is engaging with the hot wallets, right? Like so that we can able to stop the P2P in that terms, right? Like because if you leave the P2P thing, rest everything is crystal clear. I think we are good to go as an ecosystem is what I see. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is compliance is necessary, the costs are necessary, and if you're starting out, better to comply and to, kind of create a system that enables that to happen. And of course, both of you would like KYC to be allowed to each one of you. That's a separate thing there. But again, early stage play. What are the conversations that you're having with investors? How comfortable are they around the Indian regulatory risks? And what are their concerns? Because I'm sure a lot of people in the room are looking to raise money. So what are their concerns?
I think the biggest concern is unpredictability of the government or the regulator. That is one of the biggest concern. Like they were not sure what. Like I remember the days when the bill was supposed to be tabled at the Lok Sabha, and every time we were watching what is going to be tabled, and there are a lot of formats circulating on the WhatsApp groups. This is going to happen. That is going to. If you possess cryptocurrency, you will be jailed for 20 years or so. I like the IPC mein itna nahi hai. So, from that time, so I think that created a lot of apprehensions in the mind of, especially investors who are not in India, who are outside, and they look India from a different perspective altogether. But then again, like I said, that this step of making VDAs, recognizing in some way or the other, see, compliance, cost, everything is aside, but still this has provided some sort of legitimacy to everyone and some sort of stability. Like we know now we are supposed to do. We can now reach out to authorities. We can now reach out to there is a clear direction now. So
okay,
yeah.
so that's the guy who's raised money, and but you were pitching at this moment. So what is it, and how how do you tell investors, look, there's no regulatory risk, we're a nice stable market, growth market. What is the pitch that you use?
See, the post our regulations is just coming. Like in India, convincing the Web2 investors is very tough, right? Like most of the Web3 investors are from outside, right? So it's unless it doesn't reach the mass media, whatever we say to the investors, it's not so sure, right? Like so you have to give all this, whatever the government circular saying that, hey, read this out, it might work, or like this is how things are going, right? Like 2 years before it was very tough. Now it seems like okay. Like I think since it's in the mass media where everyone is talking about it, I think now it's a good time to where they can take a step back and say, hey, okay, India might be the market for the next thing.
Okay, so I think one of the positives that has come out of the G20 and is that they've actually provided a roadmap, and I think we should just take that roadmap as given and push the government to enable that roadmap. And one of the reasons I think that the roadmap is structured the way it is factored in the India elections. So hopefully, but you've been through the entire cycle of regulatory changes in India, right? Whether it was ZepPay earlier or now, there have been some good developments, right? But if you look at it, we are still facing a flight of users, okay, and businesses, okay. I keep saying that most founders of this business have a DDDS syndrome, taking off on that famous movie, right? So it's Dubai, Delaware, Dublin, and Singapore. You'll go and locate there rather than New Delhi. So what are the key areas that we need to work on, not only to do the Ghar Vapsi, as the minister called it, but also become the preferred destination for Web3?
So if they want to ensure Ghar Vapsi, they need to do something about it. Tax is a huge, huge concern, and we don't talk about it. I don't know why, but it's a huge concern. And, offshore service providers are allowed. Recently, government came up with that they have to mandatorily register with the FIU, but they need to act on it. They need to ensure that the companies who are operating in India, the companies who are doing all the compliances, bearing all the burden, bearing all the cost, everything, and whenever they call us, we are there, at their doorsteps, they need to ensure that we are also protected as a business. And the mindset needs to change. When we talk to law enforcement agencies, we are always there to help them. But how they treat us, how they talk to us, that needs to change. How the bankers treat us, how they deal with us, that needs to change. And I think it requires a heavy top-down approach from the government if they want to change things.
Okay, but really, you do on-ramping. You're at the cusp of legality, uncertainty, whatever it is, and it's the most important pieces in industry. So it's also, like I said, most challenging from a regulatory standpoint. How do you think, right, VDA regulations are going to evolve in the future, and what would be the top 3 changes that you would bring in the regulation? So we talked about the past, the present, now we're going into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'll combine these 2 questions and say like where I eventually look for the 3 things which needs to come in the future, right, for the good for the crypto industry. So one thing, of course, like everyone is like voicing out on the TDS and the what do you call that, taxations part. That's for common for everyone. And second is like more than the exchanges, next mass adoption, it should come from the gaming industry, right? That's what, like the internet is gaming industry, like that's how the internet is also penetrated so fast, right? Now I'm more curious on like if you have the same set of regulations which you have it in the assets and like plug it into the same to the who purchase the assets inside the game, like that needs to be, should be more like regulation friendly. So where like blockchain games can come in a like people can able to build it. And third one, for the interest of the retailers, it's more about like what's the regulations on the custodian, right? Like the more convincible regulations on the custodian, I think now the retail investors will come and say, okay, like take my money, like, and we will invest on it, right? The moment we have if there is no regulations on the custodians or like, then like it's kind of like, like we can't able to get more number of retail users on board. So these 3 things is what I'm looking at majorly in the.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it, because if you look at the G20 regulations, they're trying to model it on the stock exchanges. So there's NSDL, CSDL, but that perhaps doesn't work in the Web3 space, and we've got to convince regulators on what's actually happening there. I have one question left for each of them, and then I'm going to come to the audience. Right, so please do start thinking about questions. And I am a guy who literally locks the doors until the audience asks questions that don't let you out. So please think about it that way. Right, so let me come back and circle back to you, Amit. One of the big things is dollarization and forex regulations, right? And withdrawals are not permitted. Okay, a lot of the talking points about the when you talked about emerging market economies, developing, if you have a convertible currency, it's not that much of an issue, right? And you heard Advani talk last time that G10 and this thing. But if you look at one suggestion or 2 suggestions on how to solve this issue, what would they be?
So I think we need to have some sort of, sorry. Yeah, I think we need to have, government needs to have a framework in place wherein we have a specific legislation or specific framework for this particular space, wherein, so there is FEMA applicable, there is other laws applicable to single transactions, and it just creates a lot of problem. There is no clarity. If we reach out to RBI, how can we do this? They say this is overseas ODI rules and lot of problems. And when we go to bank, they also cite different laws. They don't have any clarity as to what needs to be done. I think this space requires a specific focus. This space requires where all the laws are they are. I won't say they would like. I would want them to bend the laws, but make certain frameworks, make certain policies which makes these transactions, cross-border transactions, easy and seamless. And also at the same, and from day one, we have said that we are ready to be regulated. We are ready to, we have the customer.
So you're basically saying that there has to be a system to monitor the forex.
Yes.
And a simple solution to that could be if you have the this like liberalized remittance scheme.
Yeah,
If you
LRS.
create an app for it and allow everybody who's doing this to use that app, it might work. Okay. Okay, Bharat, coming back to you. What do you think is India's solution to the forex issue around VDAs? You need to source USDC.
Yeah.
Okay. But
So, but like, yeah, as is pointed out, like FEMA and all the stuff, right? So, but what we do was we purchase it from the OTC desks of India, right? And now we are having a serious discussions with the bankers and the regulators to figure out, like, because there is a one side you see a, like I think last panel circle guy was speaking it, like, and like where they are figuring it out, like how to make the stable coin as in most like as a currency in US, right? Like now, how do we kind of partner with them and to bring it to the India? One reason is, like, if you see the Indian exchanges, like having the premium cost of the tokens because of these issues, right? Like the foreign remittance thing, right? So yeah, as Amit mentioned, like we might need a regulations over there as a money changer license or an authorized dealer license, like to face this thing. Yeah.
so quick questions. Can CBDC be used as an alternate to stable coins to allow you to do this?
That can be one of the option, but again, government needs to make other laws.
Because CBDC is trackable, you can do everything
Yeah.
on that. Do you think if you were to go and say, okay, guys, if you want to do here, but CBDC is the route that you use, not a credit card or not anything, would that work?
I'm more curious, like it's a CBDC is on the private chain, right? Like when a lot of dApps building on different chains, like how this interoperability is going to work, right? Like, so.
It's money, no? Okay, but modified CBDC is what you're saying. Okay, questions from the audience, please. I can't actually see anyone there, but any questions from the audience? Yeah, I can only hear you, so I think you are there in the fourth row or something. Please, is the mic coming to you, or do I need to get the mic to you? Okay, all right. No, I think it's coming. Or you can just say a question, I'll repeat it for the audience.
So I have two questions. Okay, good evening. I'm Subha. I'm also a lawyer. And I have two questions. One of them is, why is there no Indian exchange serving a global user base? Is it a simple business decision, or are you facing regulatory issues there? And my second question is that I have heard regulators, like at VARA, they're very easily approachable. You can initiate a dialogue with them. How does one initiate a dialogue with Indian regulators? If I'm a new startup, I'm entering the market, I want to see what can be done, how does one do that?
Okay, so one question to you, can choose which one to answer.
I can answer both of them.
No, but you leave one for him.
Sure. So the first question was, why aren't
Why are you serving customers overseas?
So we are serving, and a lot of other exchanges are also serving. But the problem is that when we look at jurisdictions, we look at specific, if it's a license regime, if, for example, ZepPay is operating in Singapore, or we are operating in European Union, then in that case we see the specific, if it's a license regime or it's not a license regime. If it's a license regime, then you have to apply for a specific license to provide services to the customers in that particular geography. If it is not, but again, countries like UK or Ireland, getting license is very difficult, like previous.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you say ZepPay serves customers in Singapore, it's not by the Indian entity, it's by a Singapore entity.
Yeah. I think, every exchange is trying to look at the regulatory presence that they have, right? And look at how not to challenge that. But a lot of Indians, NRIs and all, may be using their facilities, but they're not using it because of the 30% tax bracket. So that's also another issue. Yeah. We'll take another question, or you want to add something?
Yeah, with the FAU, sorry, I mean, like with the, like how do we work with the regulators, right? Like, to be honest, like 8 months before, like we were kind of like, we don't know whom to approach it, right? Like, because which department to go ahead? Like, good that like there isn't like FAU and like people from like, like.
On a lighter note, 3 words, BWA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dilip to-
Okay, so, okay.
It's more approachable, like you
Yeah.
can reach out to them.
We have one more question here. I think we have time for one more.
Sure.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Sushil. This question is specifically for Amit. So, Amit, as a part of Mudrex, so as a part of Mudrex, you have one excellent offering, which is something like an index fund, right? And a lot of retail people SIP into that. So I wanted to understand how did you find a regulatory way around getting money from retail investors and putting it in a mutual fund in India?
So we have not received any notice from SEBI till now. So if SEBI has a problem with
I
that,
hope this is not being broadcast. Huh?
so if any regulator has any problem with our offerings, they can write to us in writing, and I can deal with that. That's
I actually, on a positive side, I wanted to know, is there a way around where we can do this in a
Yeah, we can have that conversation because if we have it on open, the regulator will clamp down most probably. So yeah, we have time for one more question and one quick answer.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes.
This is Nathan from Factomine. I have a question for both of you. So it seems like uncertainty of the regulation seems to be one of the most challenging aspects for the Indian industry. Could you, I'm sure you have studied overseas regulation, overseas regulatory framework. Could you try to give us a couple examples? What are some exemplary or usable regulatory guidances?
Singapore. Singapore is a very good example. They have a very tight regime.
Okay, so let me answer that. The foreign exchange problem, look at MICA. They have a cap on amount you can trade, the number of trades you can do, the cap on individual trades, etc. So that's one kind of thing. Indonesia or again MICA, there are 2 different models of how you list tokens, right? And again, if you're looking at exchanges, is another kind of a thing. But what in India we need is how do you enable people who are in the developer space not to get crowded out because of what applies in the investor space. Right? There's no global regulation in that space that we see there, and hopefully we'll work with them. It was done in the early days of IT. We allowed IT companies who were exporting to import hardware, et cetera, so we can actually carve out a regulation for that. So guys, it says time's up, and thank you for being a great audience. Thank you for the questions, but thank you most to the panelists for actually giving very crisp answers and allowing us to get through the session in time and back to wherever you are.
Yeah.
You have these lights shining in the face, we can't see anything.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Dilip. Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Amit from Mudrex.